Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Matthew Musso and I'm a PhD student at the Colorado School of Mines. And it is my pleasure and honor to introduce to you today the SEPM James Lee Wilson Early Career winner, Dr. Emily Beverly. Emily is a professor at the University of Houston's Department of Earth and Atmospheric Sciences. She is the head of the Human Environment Interactions Research Group. And also, if you haven't, check out her personal website, emilybeverly.com. So Emily, how are you today?
I'm great, thank you.
So I have just a nice introductory question, which I get asked, from anyone who's not a geologist. How did you discover your passion for geology and the geosciences?
I took a very roundabout way to find geology. I should have known. I had a rock hammer when I was 10 years old. My parents bought me one that I still use today. But I didn't realize we didn't have that as a class in high school, and so I didn't realize that was a thing I could do. When I went to college, I kind of wandered through a number of different degrees, and then eventually took oceanography, I think, which is not what I do at all, but got me interested, and I ended up switching my major as a junior to geology.
Nice.
So I kind of wandered through international studies and anthropology, and I don't even remember what else.
That's good because you came in well-rounded and also
Well,
kind
I
of know.
was at a school that that was it's a liberal. I went to a liberal arts school called Trinity University, and that's very much the way the education was, anyway. So that's honestly why I ended up taking this oceanography class, is I needed another science.
Yep.
And then realized that this was a thing I could do.
Well, I like that, having that opportunity in that liberal arts college to take as many classes as you can and then figure out what you don't like compared to what you do like, and just kind of crossing off the list until you find something that you fall in love with.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I should have known, because I still have that rock hammer, but and I always loved being outdoors and being active. So, it's been a good fit for me.
Yeah, and when you're sitting in class, maybe either doing like, math intensive work, and then you get to go outside for a class, you're like, hey, there's something to this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. So, we talked a little bit about that, but what was your career path like, going to college and then, your master's at Rutgers and then your bachelor's at Baylor? Yeah, what was your career path like? And I think I saw in your very impressive CV that you've been to Georgia and a bunch of other places, and you're very well traveled. So what was that career path like for you to get to where you are now?
Yeah, I ended up choosing geology as a junior, and then crammed in all the classes I needed. And then I didn't really know what, I knew I wanted to go to grad school, but I didn't really know in what type of geology. So I ended up working for a year at Southwest Research Institute. It's in San Antonio, and they have a big geology department that does all kinds of different things, planetary geology, hydrology thing. And so I just did that for a year and ended up finding Gail Ashley at Rutgers, who does geoarchaeology. So this was a way I could combine my kind of interest in anthropology with geology. And so that's how I ended up at Rutgers working with her. So that was the first time I went to Africa, was with her working at this famous archaeological site called Olduvai Gorge. And then I later, Steve Dreesy, who was on my committee he was my outside committee member when I was at Rutgers, invited me to apply to Baylor for a PhD. And so that's how I kind of ended up at Baylor. And while I was at Baylor, I decided that academia was what I wanted to do. And so I ended up deciding I wanted to be a professor. And so that these days means doing a number of postdocs. So that's part of the reason I traveled while I was in Georgia and then at Michigan. And now, so I did 2 different postdocs and then ended up at the University of Houston as a assistant professor.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, so, like doors kind of open when you least expect it. So it kind of seems like, instead of having that direct path, like, all right, I'm going to do this, you just kind of went with the flow and making connections along the way. And
yeah, the people I ended up doing postdocs with were people I had met at conferences through my different advisors. And so it was kind of a long-term networking thing type of thing. So they were people I'd known for a long time and ended up doing these 2 different postdocs. But yeah, I definitely kind of have just gone with the flow. I was always interested in this geoarchaeology, but I've never been super particular on just one site or being focused on one site. I've kind of gone where kind of the wind has taken me. It's kind of been fun because I like to travel and see new places and meet new people. So
yeah, it is hard to narrow just, geology down to just one specific thing. And that was, it's something, it's hard to pinpoint one thing and then devote your entire career to it. And a lot of credit to those who do. But, it's important to be well-rounded and well-traveled and see the most rocks, So with your incredible career, what's the one thing, and I know that's hard to really answer on, but something that you're maybe most proud of, either like a publication or, a student that you had, something that you're most proud of in your career? Sorry, that's a hard one.
Y'all had sent me these questions and I was trying to think of this. I mean, I'm very proud. My students are doing some really good work right now that I'm really proud of. It's not out yet, but I'm extremely proud of the fact that these students, these 2, one's a postdoc, one's a PhD student, that have been doing all this research through COVID and have stuck with it. And my PhD student had to completely redesign her project. She was supposed to do all this work in Panama and ended up doing it in Texas where she could drive to instead. So I'm really proud of what they have produced out of a really difficult situation.
Do you ever find yourself re-inspired by your students and kind of where they are in their really early careers, seeing what they can overcome and do, being like, oh wow, that's like they have this sort of quality in them, and that's just inspiring to anybody really, but for you as their advisor and mentor?
Yeah, especially even though I'm mainly work with graduate students, I still always have a number of undergrads working with us in the lab, and especially working with them, they're like kind of light bulb moments, things like all of a sudden connecting things that they learned in class to things that we're actually doing either in the lab or in the field is always a lot of fun.
Nice. Yeah, I love those because I know it's happened to all of us at one point. It's like, your brain explodes. You're like, there's no way, plate tectonic, all these really incredible processes, and you're just like, so, kind of moving into that, what challenges or setbacks, I know you mentioned COVID as being one of them kind of for your students as well, but like what challenges in your career that you've faced kind of turned out to be valuable, or, either learning experiences for you?
I think one of the big challenges for me is always field work. So I do my projects are all very heavily field based, and I think being thrown into that and having to manage that pretty early on as a PhD student by myself, and taking students, and I was kind of the one in charge, even though I was not the PI. That really helped me later on kind of be confident in when I was setting up my own lab group, because I already had this experience of running things in a very challenging environment, because I do field work in very remote parts of Africa, of Kenya and Tanzania, and when I first started going, there wasn't even really cell phone service. Now there is everywhere, but when I first started going, there wasn't cell phone service everywhere, so it was very challenging. And so I think that experience helped me a lot when I started setting up my own group.
Yeah, wow, that is very challenging. But good, I'm glad they have cell phone service there now. And yeah, to kind of have that responsibility on your shoulders is a weighing task. But yeah, I'm glad things are progressing there and working out for you. And just to kind of build your career up too. And all right, this is another challenge, is not just teaching this and leading this, but corralling the students and making sure everybody's okay. Yeah, it's not just teaching the science, it's everything involved in it. So you teach, you mentor and advise students, and you do research, and you travel to Africa and all of these incredible places. How do you manage your time and maintain a sort of work-life balance?
It's hard. I think I don't have any kids, so I don't have that to kind of keep me grounded, but I do have a dog who I have to go home and take care of and take on walks and things, and that has always I got my dog when I was a first year PhD student, and that was a really good thing for me because I couldn't be in the lab all the time. I had to kind of disconnect, so that's been really helpful to me. The other thing I had to do was learn not to be a perfectionist, which is, I was always a perfectionist, but the further kind of I've gotten in my career, like the harder it is to be a perfectionist. You just don't have time, especially with teaching and all these other responsibilities that come with being a professor, not a perfectionist. I just couldn't be a perfectionist anymore, and so it's something I had to really work on. That it didn't have to be perfect, it just had to be done. And so that's something I tell my students all the time is, with their dissertations, I'm like, done is better than perfect. And one of them actually laminated it and put it in their wallet, which was more, they took it to heart more than I thought they would. But yeah, that was one of the things, was learning not to be a perfectionist, that there's there's a limit to how good you can make something, and that you just have to learn to figure out where you need to stop.
Yeah, instead of stretching yourself too thin, putting too much time on one thing, and then maybe another thing kind of falling by the wayside or lacking a little bit, just kind of giving everything that equal amount of attention and being okay that it's not as perfect could be if you had more time to spend on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, all right, this could be 5% better, but it would take me like 8 hours to do 5% better. Is that really worth my time? No, probably not. Yeah. But that was something I had to learn and teach myself how to do, which I'm still definitely working on it. But it's something that especially the further I got in grad school, I had to realize I didn't have to, my assignments didn't have to be perfect, because that wasn't the point of grad school. You know, grad school is to do research, not get, you know, the highest grade in the class anymore. So
Yeah, that's right. Let's see. All right, so kind of going right into that, what skills have helped you be essential at your job? And I know this is one of them, right? Getting everything done. And then what are some foundational skills that you think would benefit all sort of geoscientists and geology students in general?
what was the first question? Sorry.
What skills have helped you be essential at your job?
Well, I think, you know, writing skills are always important. I also, I was always very nervous about giving presentations, and so one of the things that I started doing was just giving presentations basically anytime I could get an opportunity to do one. I did things like that to try to build my presentation skills. So I would interview for jobs, like, you know, people came to campus to recruit, and I would interview for internships, even though I didn't want the internship. I would just, it was just practice. So I did a lot of stuff like that. Now there are things I wish I had been able to get more training in. One of which would be more statistics and more coding experience. So the coding I have kind of taught myself, but I really wish I had had more formal training in stats and coding in a programming language like R or Python. So I have taught myself R. Some of my students use Python a lot because those are both open source. But I really wish I'd had more training in that, because I think big data is where a lot of things are going, and I think it's also a transferable skill. So, you know, if you know how to do big data in geology, you can do big data in anything. And the other thing I push my students to do, mostly because I wish I had more background in it, is GIS and remote sensing. So even though I work in paleo, like in not real deep time, but there's tons of data out there that's really beneficial to know how to use and manipulate. And I don't have the skills to teach them that, and I wish I did. So those are kind of the two things that I wish I had more training in, and now I really push all my students to take courses in both of those types of classes.
Yeah, that's great too. And I love that you just interviewed for jobs that you kind of knew you wanted to be a professor, but yeah, you interviewed for everything else just to get that practice. And now you teach, so I'm sure you have no trouble standing up in front of a class and giving.
Yeah, now I don't. I mean, I regularly teach to 200 people now, so it doesn't bother me anymore. But it did a lot in the beginning. So I had major stage fright, and it was something I had to really work on, which I think anybody that saw me give a presentation now would probably be like, what? But, you know, I tell stories to my students that they get so nervous about it, and I'm just like, hey, like, I had this problem too, and look, you know, it's just practice. It's not an innate skill. It's just a practice thing. So.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, practice and kind of knowing the material that you're talking about, I think, is important too. You know, being comfortable standing up there, and if you're reading it off of like a piece of paper, you might be, but if it's in there and you know it's just your second language and you're speaking it, it makes it a little bit easier as well. So let's see about I don't know if I want to go into this one right away. Talking about how geoscience has changed over the years. Yeah, okay, because we talked about GIS and Python and all of this data. So yeah, how has geoscience and the field of geoscience changed over the years? And then how do you see geoscience and research evolving in the coming years?
So, I think this big data type, data science is really taking off, especially machine learning and all of those types of things with all the AI that's coming out. I think that's, I don't really know how that's going to change our field, but I know it's definitely going to change things. And my view is that we shouldn't be trying to fight it. Trying to get students not to use Chat GPT and things
Yep.
like that. We need to be teaching them how to use it properly, like how to evaluate what it's giving you, because
Yeah.
it's only as good as the person asking the questions right now. I mean, I think eventually it may get to the point where it doesn't need that help, but right now it's definitely like, if you're depending on what you ask depends on kind of the quality of the
Yeah.
paragraph you get it to generate. So I don't really know where that's going, but I definitely think that's about to change not just geology, but our culture in general. Yeah.
And I think so, it's teaching students, right, how to ask questions, how to be curious and know what to ask, right, to get, the right answer.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, I agree with you in that if used properly, it's okay. But if
Yeah.
they're, blindly just, plugging and chugging and copying and pasting, they're not actually thinking. But to know how to ask the question is important, and knowing what they're getting back is right. I think also is important too. And then, yeah, I guess, yeah, how do you think research is going to evolve? And I know, Chat GPT and AI isn't quite there as far as, research and literature goes.
hmm
But, field work, those types of methods, how do you think that's going to evolve?
Um, I mean, I think because we're getting so much data now from like satellites and things like that, that we've lost some of our experience and people that, some of the people that have done all this field work are now all starting to retire. And so we're kind of losing that. And so that's one of the things that, I'm really excited about teaching, is always making sure that we find some way to still teach um, methods, things how to do it in the field, because it's very different doing things in the field because there's so many other things you have to think about. Like for example, I was just out in New Mexico, and we got stuck in a hailstorm, and so for like an hour, and so there's all these things, you have to think about all these safety kind of things, and that's part of what you have to teach people.
Yeah.
um, and so that's something I am, feel very confident in my ability to now teach people how to do that. And and now that COVID's, finally done and we're starting to get field trips, I'm really excited about actually being able to take people in the field again and teach them. Because I really find it useful, the ability to be able to integrate all of this really interesting machine learning and things with actual field measurements. Using it to maybe model things that we're seeing, but I still think we need to actually get out and see rocks to test it, and that's not something everybody does anymore or wants to do. Like, not everybody wants to spend 2 weeks in New Mexico being hailed on and rained on because it's El Nino, and it was absolutely miserable this year.
Yeah.
But it
Builds
was still
character.
beautiful when it wasn't raining, but it was, I mean, we had, BB sized hail. It was awful.
Yeah, that's the day you kind of stay inside and read papers, but
Oh, we're camping, so it
okay.
was. we're literally stuck under a little pinion, trying to protect our heads from the hail. So
Yeah, well, as long as everybody's okay, it builds character and it makes for, a fun story, and
yeah,
you did it and you're proud that, I went out there, it hailed on us, and yeah.
I told the undergrad that was with us that she's just finished her freshman year and trying to figure out if this is what she wants to do. And I'm like, well, if you can make it through this, and you got this, like this is one of the worst days of fieldwork I've had in a while. So if you can handle this, you can handle anything. So.
And it's a physical science, and not all aspects, but for a majority, you need to be there, and it's an observational science. You need to be there, look at the rocks, and nature is imperfect. So all of these nice fancy models that we show in class don't truly translate to the real world. So yeah, getting the students out there and being uncomfortable in certain situations, it is important. So I like that. That part of it will never change, but might evolve in different ways in the future.
Yeah, I mean, there are good things that came out of COVID and adapting our teaching. I've started using all these different 3D modeling software. Like this year, I was actually just using my phone because my iPhone here has LiDAR in it, and so now you can take these really nice 3D models with your phone. You don't need any special equipment. So technology is just amazing now. And so I took a bunch of test ones that I'm gonna try to integrate into this virtual field trip I'm creating for one of my grant projects, funded projects. But there's tons of good things that kind of came out of it, and I'm trying to incorporate some of that is it in between actually seeing it on the outcrop and just like a picture in PowerPoint.
Yeah, I think, and as many tools as you have at your disposal, the better. And so, yeah, evolving, not necessarily eliminating one, but combining everything, I think is that future direction, and I like that. Let's see about here. So what impact has geoscience research and practice made to ensure human sustainability? And I know this is right up your alley, as far as geoarchaeology and human evolution. So yeah, what impact has geoscience research and practice made to ensure human sustainability? And what resources should we capitalize on to reach it? And let me know, I can re-ask the first question if you want. Yeah, so what impact geoscience research made to ensure human sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that my human evolution research is really solving any problems for us, but it does tell us a bit about where we came from, and we're always still trying to figure out. There's all these different hominins that are like different branches that are related to our ancestors, but we don't directly descend from. And so there's always these questions as to why we our line made it and the rest of these lines didn't. And maybe there's something there that might help us in terms of future climate change. So there's definitely, in terms of my personal research, like I see that as a potential benefit. And then there's a lot of effort right now going into just trying to generate better paleoclimate and paleoenvironmental records, because we've realized that this is one of the only ways we can really test some of our models, right? So the models we can only test with historical data, and nothing in the historic past is like what we expect might happen in the future. And so some of the time periods I work on in the past are good analogs. And so I'm very excited about some of the directions that research is going, and my participation in that research, because I think it will help us better understand the both short-term effects and also long-term effects, So there's lots of effects. This is SEPM, so there's lots of effects on sedimentation and weathering that we have a hard time understanding on our lifetimes, in something that's measurable on, in our lifetimes. And so looking at time periods in the past where things have changed rapidly, we can kind of use them as analogs for maybe what's going to happen in the future. So that's something I'm really excited about, and that's where I'm putting a lot of my future effort, is kind of this paleoclimate as a analog for the future.
Yeah. So gathering more data and using more advanced tools to gather that data.
Yeah, so I use a lot of stable isotopic techniques to try to get at these kind of questions.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Let's see. All right. Yeah. Do you think that geoscientists are doing a good job at outreach to non-geoscientists, especially in this, topic that we're kind of continuing, is climate change, sustainability? Do you think we're doing a good job at, answering some of those questions? And I know that once the data, we need more data in order to do that accurately. But for right now, do you think we're doing an okay job?
I think we're, doing a good job generating a lot of data. I don't know that we're doing a great job at explaining it to other people. So that's actually something I've been thinking a lot about, and have started incorporating in my teaching, is actually practicing both talking or writing scientifically, and also without any jargon, just practicing talking to other people. Because I have people that are like, well, how do I talk to my family about this? And I was like, you gotta bring it down to the level that they understand things, and realize that there's also people you're just never going to reach. But you work on the people that you can try. And so one of the examples I like to use is there's this book by, I think his name is Randolph Monroe. It's called Thing Explainer. Have you ever heard of this book?
No, I haven't, but I'm going to check that out.
It's this funny book where he's the writer for the XKCD comics, if you've ever looked at those. And they're this sciencey nerd. He's a physicist, and they're these nerdy comics. And but he has this thing explainer where he took the 1,000 most common words in the English language and explained things like plate tectonics and how the shuttle worked, and other really complicated topics with illustrations, and also this very basic and so he has a website, and I've actually had my students before practice writing out what they do using the thing explainer.
I love that.
And usually, I mean, it's supposed to be a funny exercise, you're supposed to be silly about it, but trying to explain what a hominin is when you can't use hominin or human, or I forget what I used, but you can, I don't think soil was even in there, there's all these things that weren't in there, and you have to figure out how to explain them in a way. And so it's a greatly exaggerated way of practicing how to teach other people complicated scientific topics.
No, I love that. I'm definitely going to check this out.
It's just silly.
Well, and what was the comic you said? What was the?
XKCD.
XKCD. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to check that out too. Because it is. I mean, oftentimes I'll forget explaining to my family, or that it's a second language, and there's words and terms and definitions that are involved, and when we speak it, it's obviously we understand it, but to those who don't speak that same language, they get lost, and then they get frustrated, and then they're like, all right, I'm tuning out. So yeah, to be able to explain things and just, you know, maybe 1,000 words or yeah, more common words. And that's been, you know, my experience as I've gone, you know, to get more education and more degrees. My dad, who taught me everything, is now I'm teaching him little by little. So yeah, but yeah, that is important. I love that you do that with your students. Yeah, I think that's a lot of fun to make it fun, and then also yeah, to make things understandable for everybody. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. I think more professors should do that too. Either like a
I
writing
don't know.
assignment.
I just think I like that book, and so I just like that there's a website. And like when you type in a word that isn't in the list, it's in red, so you know that it's not an accepted word. So it's just kind of fun. Like I remember my student who works on stable isotopes in Panama, trying to explain isotopes it was really funny what
Yeah.
she had to use to explain it. But I mean, she got it across,
Yeah.
but trying to explain the water isotopes in the hydrologic cycle without even being able to say isotopes is kind of fun.
Yeah, that's really difficult, but it causes you to think a little bit, how to get around certain words, and then just to be able to translate that across with, you know, I think if you know the term isotope, you know where they're going with it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like that a lot. What are some key skills you've been able to develop over your career? And I know, like, you know, these are some of them: being able to, you know, communicate effectively, take on challenges as leading students out into the field. And then what skills do you think are most pivotal for students in either early career professions or just, you know, PhD students or researchers along the way?
So I think definitely communication skills are important. Kind of the same things I already talked about, I guess. The different programming skills I think are going to become really important. I think getting as much experience either in a lab or in the field as possible is great. I mean, I love involving undergrads in our research. I think for me, you know, I just took as many opportunities to kind of practice these things. Once I realized, oh, these are the things I need to work on, I took as many opportunities to kind of practice as possible. I think I also I think it's part of the fact that I went to this kind of liberal arts school with this really well-rounded education. I think it's really important to educate yourself, you know, outside of your field still too. And you know, that could take many forms. Like, you know, not everybody wants to read more books, but you can listen to audiobooks, you can listen to podcasts, just some way to continue kind of education, because it makes you think about what you're doing in different ways. I listened to recently, I've been listening to some, you know, medical books, and it made me think about biology and and how it relates to geology in a different way. So I think, you know, educating yourself, continuing education, not just in your field, is also a really good thing. And you know, there's so many opportunities to do that now with different podcasts that are science-based, or different popular science books that you can buy on Audible or something like that. So
Do you ever like share like different social media accounts, like Instagram or Facebook accounts that maybe you follow? Because, you know, I spend, you know, like all students, time on social media, and I follow, like, you know, astronomy magazine and cool things like that. So when I scroll through it on my day to day, I'm also getting some of that information.
yeah, so I don't do TikTok, but I do or Twitter, but I do Instagram.
Yeah.
Um, So I follow all kinds of things, NASA, CERN,
Yep.
National Geographic, like all sorts of different random. I'm following one right now that's a guy that's just really into really big old trees. And it's kind of interesting him talking about the trees, or like weird beekeepers, like I just I try to kind of spread it out to do things that are kind of just teach me about the world. So I do that, and that's some of where I find these books to read or these podcasts to read is through kind of science related accounts. There's a bunch on soils, so there's people that are really into soil science and art with soil, like making pigments with soil. I find fun, so like that. So
do you think that sort of innate curiosity in you is something that is kind of innate or can be taught, just to get your students curious to follow these accounts and everything, or do you think that kind of comes along the way?
I think I've always read a lot. From the time I was a little kid, I always had a book in my hand. So I think for me, the books were kind of always the draw. And I think that if that's not your thing, there's lots of ways now to get that kind of information. Because not everybody loves to read. Maybe they're dyslexic or whatever, and reading is difficult, but there's so many ways to kind of get that information now. And I actually share some of these social media accounts when I talk to my students, like trying to get them to, look around the world. I always get so frustrated with my physical geology students because I'll use this river that they have to drive over to get to campus, and they've never looked at it in their lives. And I'm like, all right, everybody, the next time you drive over this river, like, you need to look at it. Look at how it's draining.
That's right.
Trying to get them to be aware of the world around them is usually my goal. I'm not trying to convert them to be a geology major. I just want them to just have some awareness of the world or ask questions. So, and I think there's a variety. If you can teach yourself to be interested and ask questions, there's lots of ways you can kind of get answers to your questions now. But my dad was always a big questions person, so I think that's probably where I get it from.
Yeah, and that's that dichotomy between, this social media or this AI, right? Technology being so far advanced, but then also needing that field experience and needing to be out in the field where, maybe they're driving over that river or that little creek, but they have their head in the phone looking at maybe that same creek, right? When it's right, it's right next to them. So yeah, they're seeing it online or on their tablet, but it's also out there. And, you need both of that in order to kind of, put the picture together.
Yeah.
Let's see right here. So what else could students or young professionals and early career scientists be doing to improve their career prospects, or this is kind of a personal, like just research goals, right? And doing research. So what are some things that we could be doing to just improve on doing better research, maybe, advancing your career forward?
For research goals, I'm always trying to get my students, to my graduate students especially, to kind of get a handle on is the big picture. So sometimes I think when you're a student and you're so bogged down in trying to learn all these new techniques and you're so invested in all of this data you've generated that you kind of lose track of why you were doing it in the first place. And so trying to get them always to keep the big picture in the back of their head and realize why they're doing it and why, when they're presenting it, why somebody should care. Don't just create data just for the sake of creating data. Like, you need to be able to explain why this is important.
Yeah.
And that's something I'm trying to also incorporate more into my teaching too, is being able to explain, that's part of being able to, teach somebody else about something, is knowing how to determine what's important about the the data you're reading about a particular topic. That's a skill that just takes practice.
Yeah.
I don't remember what the other part of the question was.
Yeah, I think that's, well, I guess, yeah, for early career scientists to, improve their career prospects. I think that is, that's important. I want to be a professor as well. You're a professor and being in academia and doing research, but, for those listening that want to go into industry and things like that, what are, I know interviewing everywhere all the time is one, but yeah, some other things that they could do to improve their career.
Definitely go to conferences. I mean, depending on what you want to do, it might be a different conference. So, academia might go to a different conferences than industry, but I think going to conferences and, if your advisor doesn't naturally introduce you to people, ask them to. Like, ask them to, tell them what you're interested in doing, and ask them to introduce you to people that they might know at these conferences. Some professors are good at doing that, and some are not, but I think most would be willing if you ask. So sometimes just realizing that you have to ask for what you want. Something I had to learn too. I was fortunate. One of my professors used to just push me out in front of people and be like, you should know this person, talk to them. And then, I had more professors that were a little bit more passive about it, but if I asked them to introduce me to somebody, they would. So just talking to your professors about your career goals, if they're not asking you, is a good thing, because they usually want to help. They just might be oblivious or just busy. But I think if you directly ask, most people are willing, and if they're not, find somebody else to ask. Like, there's another professor in your department that would be. There's also a lot of the conferences now have a lot of really great networking opportunities. Like GSA has On to the Future, which is a great program because it's designed for people who have never been to a conference. And they teach you how to do it and how to network, and they actually give you assignments, like you have to go talk to this many people and ask them questions. So it's really great, especially if you maybe are first generation and don't have any family that teach you how to do this, told you how to network. So yeah, take advantage of those kinds of things. Sign up for listservs. Listservs are the best. I mean, not that any of us really need more emails, but they give you so much information. Like, that's how I learn a lot of things. There's the ES Jobs one, ISOGeochem. I don't know. I can't remember the other ones I'm on, but those are, figure out what the listserv is for your field of study that you're interested in and sign up, because there's always people posting jobs or conferences or networking opportunities that on these listservs. And Twitter, I know tons of that stuff gets posted on Twitter too. Follow a bunch of science Twitters. Yeah. Somehow I run our department Twitter, even though I don't use Twitter. So I post all that kind of stuff on there. So
yeah, I'm not on Twitter. I mean, I have one, but I'm really not on it. But yeah, I think what you said really kind of about students just communicating to either their advisor or their professor, being like, hey, I'm really interested in planetary science or, sedimentary geology. And then if something comes across that professor's desk that maybe is, you instantly think of, hey, that's that student. Let me reach out to them about that. So I think oftentimes it's maybe the oblivious nature of just not knowing what their interests are and how to better help them kind of advance in their career.
Yeah. And, my students' interests change all the time too. So
Yeah.
from like semester to semester, like, it used to be one of my students wanted to be a professor at like a teaching college, and now she wants to work for a national lab. And I'm like, okay, well, that's very different than what I thought you wanted to do.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you told me.
Yeah.
Because I can push you to do different things
Yeah.
if that's your goal versus teaching. So
Yeah. But and then with that, I think it's, like, all right, cool. I had that experience teaching, but it wasn't maybe what I thought it was. Just kind of like, going back to you at that liberal arts school, that was Trinity, was it?
yeah, it's Trinity. It's in San
Yeah.
Antonio.
Oh, nice. Yeah. So I went to Lafayette College, also at a liberal arts school in Pennsylvania. But yeah, taking as many things as you think you might be interested in, and then maybe it not being what you thought, but having that process of elimination and knowing and having that support, obviously from your advisor or professor, being like, oh, okay, there's always something else, and here's another opportunity doing what you want to do. It's never like you're stuck doing that one thing, right? So yeah, being supportive of that. So okay, there's a cool question for you. So looking at the future of geoscience, and we talked about AI and fieldwork components of that, and all of these awesome conferences going around, and now that COVID's done, the world is opened back up. What work do you wish or do you hope to get involved in the future? Like, what's something that you want to start working on?
Like a new project?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, long term, we're trying to get a core out of Lake Victoria. So most of my dissertation work was around Lake Victoria, which is by surface area, like one of the largest lakes in the world that's freshwater. And a huge number of people depend on it. And it's also got really interesting archaeology and paleontology around it. And so I've done a lot of work on outcrop, but there's no long-term lake record. And so we would really like to get a core out of that. And so that's something long-term I hope that really want to accomplish. So we're in the beginning stages of trying to get that kind of funded. We just got some better seismic data so that we can know better where we want to drill. So that's something I'm really excited because that'll give us a much longer record than we have, and hopefully more continuous record than we have from the outcrops. So the outcrops are important because that's where the archaeology is and the paleontology, but having a more continuous section would be really great. So
Spending more time in our lab.
but it's an intense project because it will require like a this barge that basically it's these big pieces that fit on like an 18-wheeler that connect together to make a platform. So it will be quite the production. I don't know that I will be on the barge because I'm really more of a land person. I get very seasick, so I may be the land-based coordinator, but I'm very excited about all the science that will come out of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Core work is just another tool, right? That use to.
So that's what I've been working a lot on recently, is a bunch of cores that were collected on land from a number of different famous archaeological sites. And so this is hopefully to get a new one, but it's a lot harder because it's actually in the lake. There's nowhere you could get the core on land.
Yeah.
So
That's awesome. Yeah, that's really cool.
yeah.
And so lastly, I know we have done is better than perfect. The big picture. And so just to kind of end it off, I want to know, what are some of your favorite inspirational quotes, some things that you share to your students, or things that you've kind of read on the back of a fortune cookie and have stuck with you?
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm not really a inspirational quote kind of person.
Yeah, or just like scientific, like all models are wrong, but some are useful, right? Things like that.
My postdoc says that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, he says that all the time. I don't know. I don't know that I say anything all the time to my students. I mean, we have a bunch of jokes about soils.
Yeah.
Like
All right, you
soil.
could share soil jokes too if you want.
Oh, I don't know. They're just a bunch of memes that they've stuck on the door. I don't know. I don't know that I have like any inspirational quotes, but I do always try to make science fun. Like I'm totally okay with all the memes. My students have named all of the things in the lab. Like my 2 ovens are named after my advisors at Baylor because they thought it was funny to name them Dan and Steve. I don't know that my advisors actually know this. I don't know that I've told them. But yeah, I think I try to make it fun. I don't think science should be serious all the time.
Yeah.
So I do try to make it fun and be silly, and I make fun of myself a lot when I'm teaching because they don't get my references anymore. I'm too old now. I don't get my jokes, but if I make fun of myself, they appreciate that. So.
Well, you run the Twitter account, so you kind of are a little bit in the know.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really put anything funny on there though. So.
Well, all right. I think that's it for questions. Emily, congratulations.
Oh,
Really, we're so proud of you. Thank you so much. Anything else you kind of want to just, mention or say? I think I mentioned your website, emilybeverly.com, which is awesome.
I
And
think
the Lake Victoria
my
project.
Instagram's Emily.Beverly. I think that's right. So you can follow me on Instagram. I post pictures of my dog and rocks. That's pretty much it. And interesting stuff we do. So in the lab. But
And your ResearchGate, I'm going to follow that.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know that. I'm looking for another PhD student if anybody is watching this and needs is looking for a PhD program. But other than that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Emily. Congratulations again. It was really.
I hope I get to meet you. Will you be at GSA at Pittsburgh?
I don't think so. Not at GSA. I'll be at Bathurst in Naples in September, but that's more so carbonates. I think it's the carbonate conference. Yeah, my PhD field is in Kentucky, Tennessee, doing carbonates. So yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Mississippian age, which is really cool time period in the Earth's history.
That's a cool time period for carbonates.
It is a lot of crinoids. But yeah, well, thank you. And at some point in the future, absolutely, I'll be at the conference, and we'll link up.
Okay, sounds great.
Thank you. Have a great rest of the day.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.